scored at 91. So this shows you this was a quality film. And I'll go through it all, or rather in brief points, right? I don't want to like make this like extensive, but I will say a few things. I do understand the rating. I think this was a good movie, and it will sell. And I think this has longevity, and it did promise to bring back some of the stuff that fans were asking for. I assume maybe it was just the creators themselves, and I'm just regurgitating that. But that's neither here or there. I think the execution was good, and this almost had elements of the second Doctor Strange movie. However, leading into the multiversal like saga ending per se, I think this actually hit the mark where like what it was supposed to do, and the like ending battle was actually pretty good, or the ending lesson rather. So let me go through my notes because I did take notes here. Yes, I was definitely that person. All right, so let's go over a few things. So at the beginning, he's basically recapping everything about the movie with him, Doctor Strange. I forget the title already, but basically the previous Spider-Man film. He's basically recapping like how that's been impacting him, and I think the movie takes the first 10 minutes to quickly transition or speed up like I don't know how many years it has to be. Four. I believe the synopsis had this like in the ropes. Four. It had not it didn't have 4 specific years, but basically it was like going through who he's been facing. He's beaten like multiple villains like the Scorpion, a lot of other Tombstone, and the Hand. I was like, oh, I did not expect them to enter this movie. I was sure we would see. I mean, I was like maybe not Elektra, but Daredevil, possibly Elektra, like as a sneaky tease. But maybe that wasn't in the cards. Maybe not just yet. This villain here, I also not Tarantula. All right, so he also faced this villain as well and beat him. Now, that being said, we're gonna move past that because he does. Let me see. He keeps the note and the cup that he bought from the shop that MJ was working at. Both of them at MIT at this point. Leading into the graduation year, he's following their posts. He's basically looking at what they're doing, all of that. There's somebody on his floor that I think he's talking to. Okay, so yeah, he's basically going over a lot of stuff on his end too, about which comics they're referencing. So, and that too. Oh wow. Also, now I'll get all these references. So they combined a lot of storylines for this. So I think the lady he meets on his floor might have been a character. I thought Gwen, but maybe not. And then let's see what's going on. I thought I saw a potential Miles Morales like character, but I don't think that happens. She does meet Castle, and they get into like a quick skirmish. She kicks him out of the van, and Sadie Sink character, or basically the person in the truck, is swapping minds as she frees the Scorpion, and then that leads into a great chase scene and a good application or introduction to her powers. I think what this did something really interesting because I was assuming, okay, so I'm assuming she's going to be for the like in the reboot series. I think this probably just introduced her character. Like what I think Marvel did was just like let's find slightly interesting ways in multiple storylines that we could involve these characters and introduce like their abilities and powers. I was like, wait a minute, that actually might be pretty good. So, and then that flows on. Eventually, ironically, Spider-Man meets Yelena and the new Avengers team, and they have like multiple chats and conversations throughout the movie. I think is actually pretty funny about like how yeah, like what he does is like really low, but they handle the big stuff, which is ironic because most of the new Avengers are quite literally, no offense, they are farmers, and Spider Man is stronger than their strongest super soldier. And that's not, it's crazy because Spider Man is that strong, and he's able to, I guess, hold his own against like most of the enemies that he faces. But when he unlocks his closer to potential, because he doesn't even go that far, well, he doesn't max out, I should say. He does crazy stuff. Like it's actually crazy. Granted, they hinted at that at the previous series, but like here they actually fully, excuse me, fully go forward with that. All right, what else we got? They meet the director of damage control in this organization. I'll just say they're bad news, and they are going to be around, and I think they may play a factor in the next film. I am interested if their involvement is what creates the Hobgoblin, because we didn't get any setup for that. Now that is the interesting part here. They didn't set that up, so I'm assuming that they're probably going to. Sorry, I'm looking at this at the same time. I'm assuming they're probably going to hopefully tie that in. I, I mean, I would say Ned as Hobgoblin into symbiote storyline would probably be a good way to like end this series. But who knows? They might do something a little different. I will say I'll get to that next point a little bit later. Let me actually go through a few more of these. So eventually Peter does go to their house and he does see them, and he sees that Ned is obviously still like tracking Spider-Man, and they moved into a building and he's basically being a friendly neighbor, and then he sees MJ with her new boyfriend. Hold on, I was looking at this real quick. Okay, they didn't reference that. All right, so then you get to the point where Peter is basically going through like his mutation or symptoms that he thought were headaches. They start to kick in. He basically wakes up, and I mean his powers basically go into overdrive. Now Peter's pretty dang powerful. I'm gonna be honest. Like every sense of spider sense or of the ability itself, it's never been displayed to the level it has now. Like Peter genuinely can hear probably the entire city, if not more, and it's all coming at him at once. It's like it's literally a replica of Superman's. Donald, I forget which scene. It was first Superman. I think it was Man of Steel. But in his scene, he hears everything, like in probably city plus state, maybe statewide. I think this is the same thing here because Spider Man is unable to like grasp it. He then goes to the university and meets Banner. They talk about inhibitors. One inhibitor, in fact, they say that it can create a weapon or sort of like it can create something that can basically control any mutant or control. So not they didn't say any mutant specifically. So they say any power. So the crazy thing I said the mind swapping isn't good, and at that point I was like, okay, like the plot and the twist, I weren't like fully on board. But the next scene, basically, he's meeting MJ, and then he's discussing with her, and he thinks she remembers, is a plot twist for literally Sadie Sink's Jean Grey. Well, we don't know her at that point, but for her character at that point. Oh, by this also, I forgot to mention that they also had another interaction, and she's unable to get into his mind because again they like this series sorry this movie is all about progression and like understanding the true you and you're unlocking your full potential. And it does that for all the characters. Hulk, it does that for everybody here. So we move forward, and basically she's gotten into MJ, and then she basically got what she needed. She's going to the university. Peter saves MJ, and then that was a good twist. I do like that a lot. And then Peter goes to Frank again for help, and then Frank basically has the entire thing booby trapped. And obviously, since Peter is just not in full swing, his powers aren't working, his spider sense is not kicking in, and he quite literally has stuff just set up for most people. I mean, obviously, thankfully, Spider Man's strong, so it doesn't really affect him as much. But that being said, I completely forgot this call was happening. So then you move forward to Peter and MJ talk. What else? What else? All right. So Spider Man, they basically get to the building. It's close to being destroyed. She's looking. Sadie is looking for information, which we'll find out later to be her sister, and like what happened with that, and this thing called VMAX, and then you get Smart Hulk versus Peter, which is a really interesting bout. Peter is really creative, and he has to be because Hulk is just too strong, even for him. But what happens is they finally get the inhibitor. No, he's trying to get the inhibitor on him, but they try to do it on get it on Sadie. They fail to get the inhibitor on him, and then round two begins, and we see for the first time like the actual angry Hulk, and he's even bigger, or he's the size he should be at, like to his 208 version. He's definitely much stronger here for sure, and at this point Peter has no chance. Like he does get a good shot in, like with the shocker glove, and granted that he's actually strong, it actually excuse me, it packs a punch. Sorry guys, we're going to pause this really quick.
One last kill, with this kind of carrying on some of the plot threads there. One last kill.
Sorry for that distraction. So yeah, Peter eventually figures out how to get the inhibitor working with MJ's help at Castle's place, and they basically start that. And we get a bit of more insight of. Oh, by the way, also at this point, Sadie is captured by a damage control, which we've come to find out their motivation is to basically. How can I say this? Their biggest thing is to counteract metahumans of all kinds. They're going to lead somewhere because they're still out there, I assume. Not the main villains of the next Spider-Man, but maybe they, like I said, they hopefully they are involved in making the Hobgoblin. That's the best story that can work. But also, there's some things like if there are some negatives in Spider-Man, that's also another thing. Like, how do they continue to push the story, give this character room for stuff? The skill set is not limited, but it's like I think Spider-Man will work best with like duos. So I wonder who they will continuously add. How it until up until they introduce the symbiote stories, like if they were going on this road, I think Grounded, which really wasn't grounded. I don't know how Hulk and then Jean, which base like this was literally an Avengers, multiple Avenger level threats in this movie. I don't think this wasn't the grounded that they were thinking. Like they were probably okay. This is not in space. Like we don't. Even then, like we'll get to that. So they capture Sadie. They take her to their maximum security thing. We basically find out about Jean's sister, and they basically ended her trying to push her too hard to replicate these experiments, and I assume transmute them into other people. Which I'm going to keep saying this can help create a lot of villains and just a lot of like
Movie.
people.
It's not
So
major things, but stuff like the Kingpin.
hopefully they actually like make good use of that. Moving forward, what else do we got? Moving forward, yo. So they basically push Jean to the point where not only can she mind hop, she now has full blown telepathy in unison with her telekinesis. They thought they thought like she had a range, so she shouldn't be able to escape. And then let's see how much we can push her before she gives out. Or they were hoping either direction they were going to get what they wanted. What they got here was Jean Grey now at like a starting point, who is lost, confused, betrayed, and she doesn't feel like she has anyone because her mom and sister are out of the picture. She's basically also holding, I forgot Presker, I forgot the director's name again, but she's basically holding him hostage. At that point, we get Spider-Man versus a few of the henchmen, and then he's having some trouble because they obviously have weapons that can neutralize him. But then we get to the hand, and I'm gonna be honest, this was probably for me the second best like action sequence versus versus like the hand. And it's incredible. Like, they are such a unique group of people, and you're saying how can they handle Spider-Man? Well, they have weapons that look similar to what they had in the game, basically tailor made to counter the Hulk. Basically, what they not no we don't do They're basically their whole kit is basically to counteract Spider-Man, and the hand are just really good at like his spider sense isn't like at the is on and off, and he has an inhibitor still on. So I mean, granted, that was still great, and then he still was able to fight them, which is fantastic. But they started to put the beat down on him. I'm gonna be honest, like they genuinely started to put the beat down on him, up until the point where Sadie's just talking to him like, "Are you Spider-Man? Like, who are you? Like, what are you going to? What is it going to be?" It gets to a point where he takes the inhibitor off, and then he basically allows himself to channel the full arachnid formula. And when I say at that point, they have no chance. Like, the Spidey sense is controlled. He now has full form of it. In the beginning, I think I forgot to mention this, where he basically almost killed Scorpion after a few hits. Here, it's just like it's fully controlled. His like he basically breaks. So the weapon that they had that usually hurt him before, it just breaks it. Like, he was stronger than Cap before. I think here, I'm not gonna say he's as strong as the Hulk, but I think he's probably closer to like Smart Hulk strength, or maybe a little bit, I don't know, higher or lower here at that point. And he gives him the absolute work. Doesn't kill him though, which shows you the actual control, which is really good. Like, this movie, every time I kept doubting, like, okay, like my interest, I've been pulled back in by like how smart certain just placements of certain scenes and dialogue was here. I was like, wow, this was just like so intelligently placed. Like, I don't have any issues. So we move forward, and then we get to him and Sadie Sink. He's trying to talk her down. She does like telekinetically like restrain him, but he's still able to. Excuse me. They should continue with like why he's oh, this is also the sign vent max. There we go. That's what it was. They also should continue with like how Spider-Man is able to resist all this. Like, he resisted Strange's soul pushing out of the body, and he was still able to, like, his senses were still able to react. Oh, I forgot the whole thing. Jean Grey stopped the entire city. Like, she just literally caused I'm saying it again. She literally caused what Thanos and no, what Strange did in the movie, basically sending everybody away in the city. Basically did the same thing, which was so crazy. And at this point, she's like, "I can get into your head now." He's like, "Go ahead and try it." And then he basically allows her in his head to basically give her a lesson and like show her that she's not alone. And this is where the Spidey sense is so, like, his Spidey sense is absurdly powerful. He was able to not only resists basically Jean's like telekinetic control. He heard, so Frank Castle is in this scene also. Obviously, I'm skipping steps, but Frank Castle's in this scene, and he takes the killing shot. Granted, she would have had no protection from this because she was distracted, so she would have been gone. Like, he brought big guns. When he said he didn't have all his big guns when they had a little exchange with the Hulk, he meant what he said. So Frank Castle was a really good addition into this entire movie. But he ends up shooting Peter because Peter got in the way. I was like, wow. Like, not only did he, well, she probably loosened her grip, but he still broke free of the control, and he was able to get away. That's incredible. Peter ends up in the hospital in the coma. Him and Frank have a moment, heart to heart, which is really, really wonderful. I love it. Peter gets outside, and Frank covers for him, and then he basically goes on to continue his duties. With that being said, at the end, you'll see a scene where I wasn't expecting something different, but Ned is basically in the shop, and instead of Peter like turning away, he basically shows him the handshake that they used to do, and Ned remembers. However, I do like that they just ended on that note, and instead of Spider-Man will return, the post-credit scene was basically him, the Spider Tracker, showing him in a far distant planet, which sets up something interesting. This does two things. This either set up a Spider-Man 99 or Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man out in the universe. I think that's what that's hinting. That might be. It makes the most sense, hopefully. And then you end. So I know there's a few things out of place there, but that's basically the spill of the movie. Overall, I think it was really good, and I